The Ag Committee will come to order. Clayton, would you call the roll, please?
Senator Crago.
Here.
Senator Ide.
Here.
Senator McEwen.
Here.
Senator Pearson.
Here.
Chairman French.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Clayton. First up is House Bill 63, Working Animal Protection Act. Here to present the bill is Rodriguez Williams. If you'd come up and walk us through your bill, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Ag Committee. I'm Representative Rachel Rodriguez Williams with House District 50 and come before you this morning to present House Bill 63, titled Working Animal Protection Act, and ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, some of you might have seen this bill before. This morning I bring to you a bill that's I believe, and my co-sponsors believe, that would help solve the problem of, or get ahead of the problem of the deterioration of our Western heritage. This piece of legislation is intended to protect legal, law-abiding animal enterprise from the radical animal rights extremist agenda. These groups have found it easier to promote their agenda at the local level, specifically the municipal level, and sometimes the county level. Local bans on working animal industries destroy animal ownership, job opportunities, and revenue that animal exhibitors, carriage companies, and others bring into the state for all citizens to enjoy. Local bans on specific working animals deny families access to opportunities to view and or interact with animals just because it doesn't align with their certain groups' ideologies. Traveling fairs, animal exhibits teach the importance of true conservation of any species. As many as these animals' native habitat is no longer, or is disappearing, or has disappeared in some states. If you attend our local rodeo during the summer in Cody, at times downtown you'll be approached by animal rights activists that are trying to encourage tourists to not attend the rodeo, claiming that animal cruelty occurs. Some states have passed similar legislation to the bill that I bring before you today, and I will state that in advance, the bill does nothing to remove local public health and safety laws that are already in place. I will also add that there has been some movement specifically as well in our state. And when I originally presented this bill, I hadn't thought about it, but a few folks have brought it to my attention that there are some counties that are implementing land use plans and adopting certain regulations that pertain to where activities can take place. And so I think that this bill is, again, a proactive bill. And I can tell you, I don't know about your towns or your counties, but in my town, our rodeo takes place within city limits. And there's a lot of things that go on downtown that take place within city limits as well. And in some towns, there's carriage rides and things like that that cater towards tourism. So again, this is kind of a proactive bill. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, it's pretty simple. On page 1, we create a new law that begins on line 11, titled Working Animal Protections. And moving on to page 2, again, no city or town shall enact an ordinance or a policy that terminates, bans, or unduly restricts a person from using a working animal in lawful commerce or animal enterprise. And this law, again, shall not be interpreted to amend, or this section shall not be interpreted to amend any other Wyoming law that relates to animal care, public health, or public safety. Moving on to page 3, line 10, another new subsection, working animal protections. No county shall enact any resolution, ordinance, or policy that terminates, ban, or unduly restricts a person from using a working animal in lawful commerce or an animal enterprise. And then moving down to line 17, this section supersedes any resolution, ordinance, or policy that conflicts with this section, but shall not supersede any zoning resolution enacted under this title. As on page 4, as used in this section, we defined what a working animal means. Any non-human animal used primarily for the purpose of performing a specific duty or function in commerce or animal enterprise, including, and it goes on there. We use the word husbandry on line 13, and I will tell you, in debate on our side on this, that word did come up. There was some concern about puppy mills, that debate has come up. And I'll just tell you that this bill would not protect puppy mills where the conditions would rise to the level of animal cruelty. And we do have law in place already, which is 6.3 1002 cruelty to animals that exist in our state statute as well. And Mr. Chairman, members, on page 5, this bill goes into effect on July 1, 2025, and I would stand for any questions.
Committee, any questions of Representative? Senator Craigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, thank you for being here. So quick question, you said a few other states have passed this type of language. Could you tell us which states those are?
Sure. The one that comes to mind off the top of my head is Oklahoma. They use different terminology in their bill. If I remember correctly, it's called agritourism is the term they use in the bill, but it's very, very similar type of proactive bill.
Senator Ide.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Rodriguez, like this little bill actually here. It's just help me or clarify. So it would override like ordinance and policies locally, but it wouldn't override zoning ordinances, essentially, bottom line. Is that correct? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hyde, I would say correct. On page 1, it states no city or town shall enact an ordinance or a policy that terminates these type of activities. And my bless you, my comments earlier when I presented the bill, I think there's an interesting trend occurring across our state as I bring forward this bill. I think times have changed since I originally brought this last year, and it was kind of a low priority bill. There are some regulations that are being placed in our counties, and I'm concerned about them. I think that the landscape in some of our counties is changing. This bill gives the opportunity to preserve, again, some of the activities and the things that we value in our state. Mind you, not every county is the same. The things that one might value in Teton County might look different than Park County, right? But again, it's a proactive bill and intended to really keep an extremist agenda away from infiltrating at the local level, if that answers your question. Thank you.
Senator Craigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, so you just mentioned there's some, I guess what I'm gonna say, regulations, ordinances, et cetera, that you're seeing pop up around the state that relate to this. Can you give us a couple examples of what that looks like and just maybe where that's happening?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Crago, thank you for your question. So I can only speak really to my own county in detail, and trust me, I'm trying to follow what's happening back home, but my plate's a little full while we're here. The good chairman does reside in my district as well. So there are counties that are working on land use plans and considering regulations and using definitions that really pertain more to the federal level than state level definitions. All the way, I mean, we're talking everything from X-rated entertainment facilities down to where you can set up certain types of businesses when it comes to zoning and these regulations that are being considered. Mind you, in my own community, there's a big there's pushback against these regs, and I am curious why they are using federal definitions versus, I mean, they're more expansive than words that are in our green book and that aren't even defined in our green books. And so I guess I would say a representative that or senator that I had that I kind of had an aha moment on this bill when I think about it being proactive, because times are changing again. I don't know what these regulations will look like in other counties, but when it comes to horse and carriage rides and rodeos and other activities that this bill narrows in or hones in on, those type of activities might be included in these regulations.
Follow up, Senator.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that explanation, because that's what I was trying to get at, and it's a little bit of a follow-up to what the good Senator Ide was asking you about regarding zoning, because you're referencing land use plans, which are zoning, and if that's where this is all taking place, I'm not sure we're exempting zoning out, right? So your bill says that the restrictions or the protections in here don't apply to zoning. I guess maybe that's something we need to think about, whether we want it to apply to zoning or not. So thank you, because that's super helpful. And what led me down that path was Senator Ide's question. So thank you.
I'll just make a comment. I know years ago, there was a real push to ban calf roping. They felt that was a cruel thing, and it got some traction nationwide, and then it kind of fizzled. But Senator Pearson?
That's why they call it tie-down roping now, Mr. Chairman.
You brought it up. Senator, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Rodriguez Williams. So I'm kind of confused on page 3, line 5 through 8. So it says the term shall not include rabbits, llamas, cattle, swine, sheep, goats, poultry, or any other animal that is used primarily for the protection of food and fiber. So I know that in our area, there are several trail herds that go through parts of town to get to the other side of the interstate or things like that. Would this protect those trail herds? I mean, currently I know that it's not happening now, but like out north of Rock Springs, there are complaints of the sheep herds out there, getting from one side from North Rock Springs to South Rock Springs, you have to go over and overpass over the interstate to get over there. And of course, those animals are for food and fiber, and they have working dogs that are out there wandering around. And so I'm just wondering if this bill would protect those instances as well, where it says that it would not include animals for food and fiber. So just a question. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pearson, thank you for your question. I can tell you that the other side of the chamber looked at these specific lines a little bit, and there was concern about cattle, sheep, and goats and how they are used and worked by local ranchers. So I would tell you that that as the bill sponsor, I invite the committee to make any changes that they see necessary to those lines. Definitely a policy decision, and yeah, how livestock are used, and these ones in particular, you gave a great example, so thank you.
Any other questions? I think we'll wait just a minute or two. It looks like Senator Crago may be ready to ask another question. Senator Crago.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So obviously you and I have seen this bill. I think this is the third time. I think you had it in the House 2 times before. And I was just looking at the previous version that we did, the most recent version. And you had exempted out also, I think, like seeing eye dogs, and you did not, are they included in it this time? Do we want to add that back in? Because we had done, I think we did that before, but any thoughts on that, Representative?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Crago, thank you for your question. Yes, this bill, the past couple of years has been a low priority for me. But I think it's a good little important bill, especially how times are changing. There has been some interesting debate as it's gone through different committees over the last couple of years, everything from, well, I have a working snake to I have a working rabbit, just kind of some silly things have come up. I would tell you that I think the guide dogs are already addressed in our state statute. The same with working first responder canines. Those are protected already in state statute. So again, I think this bill is a little more narrower, and I would say keep it whole. The focus that it's in. However, I do respect the good concerns that have been brought up prior to your question by your committee.
Committee, further questions? Okay, thank you, Representative. I'll open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bob McLaurin. I'm with the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. We represent the 99 cities and towns in Wyoming. This bill, as our understanding was developed by a group out of Oklahoma called the Calvary Group. And they've been pushing this bill around a couple states. They passed in Oklahoma and in Arkansas, and most recently, the Arkansas Senate repealed it, but it didn't pass the House. So we're opposed to this bill because we believe it's a preemption of local authority. None of our cities or towns are passing any regulations that would inhibit rodeos or anything that this bill addresses. So we would ask you to vote no on this bill because we think that this is a solution looking for a problem in our minds. This does preempt local zoning authority, is the way I read it. I also would question, I live in Jackson. We have a stagecoach that runs around the town square. We think that, what effect would that affect the city's ability to dictate to where the stagecoach goes around the square? So we don't think it's a necessary bill, and we'd ask you to vote no on it. Be happy to answer any questions, sir.
Yeah. May not be an issue at the moment, but I think this bill, and I hate to speak for the representative, but I think this bill is an effort to not go there. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Let's not go there, because it could be, maybe there's nothing now, maybe tomorrow, some municipality says, you know, God, that rodeo, some of the activities in that rodeo, we need to cut those out. And I think that's kind of where this bill's coming from. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that perspective, but what I would suggest to you, that's an issue for the local city council and the local board of county commissioners to determine from our point of view. So, but I appreciate that perspective, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Wham?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Any other public comment on this? Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Brittany Tennant. I'm a resident of Laramie County, and I am the CEO of the Cheyenne Animal Shelter. I have spoken to several of you in the past about this bill, and I'm here today to ask again that you do not vote for this bill, and perhaps to suggest that you think about creating an interim topic. The only thing that continues to come up in this discussion is the idea of regulating or not regulating rodeos. And we understand that rodeo is a critical part of Wyoming's heritage and our traditions here in the state. But this bill is so broad and so vague that it's actually creating far more questions than we have answers to. For the sponsor to continue to refer to this bill as simple and little is to diminish the actual scope and impact of it. I myself have worked for years on local ordinances in animal care and control. And when I look at this bill, and then I look at those local ordinances here in the county, I have a very hard time reconciling how we're going to enforce those ordinances, which have nothing whatsoever to do with rodeo, in light of the language of this bill. I also want to point out that it can create some additional challenges in aligning with existing state statutes. This includes particularly the statute about dogfighting. There's no other purpose for dogfighting but for entertainment and commerce. So where does the line be drawn between commerce and cruelty and neglect? This bill doesn't tell us that. It doesn't tell us what is a cruel industry and what's not. It's only seeking to defend one industry, but it's catching up all of the others in its net. I also think that it could create the opposite effect than what you're looking for in terms of making it easier for industry to operate in the state. Because what you run the risk of doing with this bill is forcing cities and counties to individually interpret the scope of it, which might create a patchwork of regulation that industry has to adjust to as it moves from city to county across the state. We talk about this bill as something that is claiming to protect our heritage, but in fact, it is inviting bad actors into our state. It denies our history of responsible stewardship and disincentivizes thought leadership from our livestock and wildlife managers. It completely removes any concept of local control. This bill claims to be proactive, but in reality, it is reactionary. It gives more power to the specter of outside influences than it does to local residents, voters, and elected officials. Thank you.
Yeah, Senator McEwen.
Just one quick question. Is dogfighting already illegal in Wyoming or not?
Senator, through the chairman to you, correct, it is currently illegal.
Follow up.
So I've lost the train of thought that this bill allows dogfighting if it's already illegal.
My understanding of the bill is that if somebody engaging in dogfighting says that this is a form of commerce in which they make money and it is the way that they do business, that it would be allowable under this bill because it is a form of business.
Wow, we're back on illegal aliens should have driver's licenses. It's illegal, period. You can't have commerce that's illegal.
I understand that that might be your perspective, Senator. I'm just here to represent perspective from the animal welfare community and from myself as a citizen of the state.
Well, thank you.
Any other comment? Thank you for your comments. Any further, Mr. Moline?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation, sitting in support of this bill. And I guess it depends on your perspective, if it's reactionary or proactive. It's reactionary that some of these legislation have come up in other states, so maybe we're reacting. But it's proactive, that maybe we haven't had it in Wyoming yet, but it's proactive to essentially nip it in the bud. To help answer some of the questions, on page 4 about this, I would think the seeing eye dogs would be under service animals. That's the way I would interpret it. Perhaps that's not correct. And then the way I interpret this, on page 3,
What, excuse me, please state the line so we can follow you.
on page 4, it's line 12, that mentions about including human service. I would assume that would include the service animals, would include seeing eye dogs. Perhaps I'm wrong.
Senator Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Moline, so if you look on page 4, there's a specific reference to Title 23-3019. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
So my question is if once you start making a list, but don't put everything on the list, what gets included? So, I mean, previous versions of this bill, there was a reference to Title 35, Chapter 13, the 200 series. And so that was my question to the representative is, do we need to include those? Because once we start a list, we need to make sure the list is complete, or someone's going to argue, well, you intentionally excluded them from the list. That was my only question. Does that make sense?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Crago, yes, hence the danger of ever making a list. I agree with that. And then the question about, the planning or the zoning, on page 3, lines 12 and 13, any resolution, ordinance, or policy, I would take that to mean that it would include the zoning, because I believe the zoning, is it considered, as a question, is it considered a county ordinance? Which I believe it is, so I think that would cover in essentially the same type of wording on page 1, line 14, dealing with cities. So sitting in support of this bill, again, we haven't had this problem in Wyoming, but it's happened in other states, and I like to view it as proactive. Mr. Chairman, I'd take any questions.
Senator Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Moline. So I think what Senator Ide and I were trying to get to is, so you're correct, lines 12 through 15 says no county shall enact any resolution, ordinance, or policy, which would include zoning. But then right below that, then it goes on to say, this section supersedes any resolution, ordinance, or policy that conflicts with this section, but shall not supersede any county zoning. So I think what we were trying to get at is there's conflicting language within that portion, and I don't know how to deal with that. But anyways, it's in there.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Crago, touche. I agree with you, sir. I'm not knowledgeable enough with the law to be able to fix it, but I think that circular reasoning doesn't typically work.
Any further questions of Mr. Moline? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other public comment in the room? Seeing none, we have a couple online. Clayton, if you would bring in Sylvia, okay. Can you hear me, Sylvia?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'm Sylvia Bagdonis from Laramie, and I would like to encourage you to vote no on this particular bill. It is backed by out-of-state organizations, as has been indicated before. One is the Calvary Group, and it has a history of lobbying against essentially all animal protection bills. And I'm particularly concerned about our animal shelters, rescues. And it has been funded by a billionaire, the Lucas Oil Products. And he has a history of attempting to curtail or stop the puppy mill industry in his state of Missouri and nationwide. And this group is funded also by large corporations that make their money with puppy mills. And I know that this bill, as you have mentioned, was introduced before in the past 2 years. And the reason that it failed because of local control issues, as Wham and others have indicated today. There is no evidence that there is a problem to protect the rodeo industry from animal rights advocates. In fact, in the media in the last couple of years, the rodeo industry is proliferating and very successful in Wyoming. So if this bill is passed, it does have some extensive impacts on our local communities. It creates a loophole for the people who wish to evade reasonable animal welfare requirements. It puts puppy mills beyond the reach of many existing animal ordinances. So if you do decide to pass this bill, I hope that you will clearly add an amendment about this concern for puppy mills. And it does complicate efforts to establish reasonable standards for local activities such as roadside zoos, traveling circuses, and exotic animals that may be used in conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions for Sylvia? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. All right, next up is okay, all right. Can you hear us?
Yes, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I can hear you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Madhu Anderson, and I'm from Green River, Wyoming. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak today. I oppose Bill HB 063 for several reasons. So the main reason is that the 2024 Wyoming Republican Party platform asserts that the most effective, responsible, and responsive government is the government that is closest to the people. This concept is particularly relevant to local municipalities and counties. However, HB 063 directly challenges this local governance, underlying both current and future initiatives that set fundamental standards for the housing, care, and welfare of animals. Another reason is this bill provides a vague definition of a working animal. This ambiguity creates a loophole for those looking to bypass reasonable animal welfare standards. The bill describes a working animal as a non-human animal used primarily for performing a specific duty or function in commerce or an animal enterprise. This could complicate our ability to set effective standards for roadside zoos, traveling circuses, and exotic animals used in businesses. Additionally, this bill raises an important question. If a community decided that commercially bred dogs and cats should no longer be sold in pet stores to promote animal shelters and nonprofit rescues, would that be overridden by this bill? Because such an ordinance was indeed passed by the city of Rock Springs in April 2018. That's why I request you that please vote no on HB 063, as it may adversely impact animal welfare and our local governance. Thank you for your time.
Any questions for Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make sure I heard and understood something you said. You would like to see puppy mills shut down to help strengthen the abilities of shelters? Did I get that right? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McQueen, I mentioned that there was a bill, an ordinance, a local ordinance in Rock Springs, which was passed in April 2018, which does not allow pet stores to sell dogs and cats because we want to promote animal shelters and animal rescues. So if this bill will override something like that, because we already have that bill in place.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? Thank you, Mother, for your comments. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. That's everybody online, Clayton? Okay. Any other public comment in the room? Any elected official want to comment? Seeing none, I would ask the representative to come back up and possibly answer some of the comments that she has heard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I think I've already addressed the puppy mill part of some of the public comment. I'm not sure what.
Would you run across that again? Because it seemed to be an issue with a few people on the puppy mill.
Sure. So as Mr. Chairman, as the good senator questioned one of your public comments, puppy mills are not explicitly illegal. However, they're illegal if it met the definition of animal cruelty under 6.3.1002. And that's spelled out pretty well in statute. Trying to think of what other questions were asked or concerns were brought up. I think that as far as service dogs and first responder dogs, I brought those up earlier. First responder dogs are covered in 6.5.2.11 of our state statute already. And forgive me, I don't have the guide dog statute offhand. In regards to the conversation with Mr. Moline and zoning and some of the things that the good senator brought up earlier, Senator Crago, I think I was reading through it when I was sitting back there. I think maybe my recommendation, and again, I mean, I appreciate the bill process and getting lots of legislators' input on bills. That's what makes great bills. I think looking at it, I would, on page 3, line 17 through 21, if I would have a preference, and again, this is open to opinion, your discretion, I think I would probably scratch the line 21 and 22 and just keep that section on lines 12 through 15. Again, this is page 3, because if ordinance is defined or looked at or considered as zoning, I don't want to rule that out, so to say. So perhaps just deleting lines 21 through 22 would solve that problem. But again, open to suggestions from the good lawyer.
All right, thank you. Hold on just a second. All right, Senator McEwen, then I have a question. Go ahead.
Representative, what did Titanic weigh when it sunk? As I read through this bill, I don't see anything about puppy mills in it. I think we're going down a rabbit hole. And I guess I'm asking, am I missing something where this either promotes or demotes the use of puppy mills? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McEwen, thank you for your question. I think that this bill has brought in some public comment that has gone down rabbit holes. This does not, I don't believe this opens the door to that. I simply was answering the question and addressing the concerns that the good chairman asked me to. Thank you.
Representative, I got a question for you. What's your comment on, it's been brought up, local control, that this goes against local control? Any thoughts there? I know the legislature puts out all kinds of bills and laws and whatever. There's books and all kinds of books full of, you will do this, you will do that. If you don't do this, we'll fine you, we'll do whatever. Any comments on that?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for that question. I personally, as a legislator, believe that the term is overused and applied so often when we debate bills. I'll tell you conversely that local governments are merely political subdivisions of the state, created by the state, and like the federal government, assigned limited governmental duties. Local governments did not form state governments, and state governments are in no way subservient to local governments. We give guidelines and set laws and policies all day long in the green books and then through rules and regulations for the subdivisions of the state.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of the representative? Seeing none, thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Committee, what's your thinking here? Bill has been moved by Senator Ide. Second by Senator Pearson. Okay, as we look through the bill, is there anything that sticks out that's a concern, or you want to make an amendment? Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the only thing maybe for discussion for me is what the representative brought up on lines 21 and 22 on page 3, but that would also relate back to page 2, lines 8 and 9. It's essentially the same language. And I'm not smart enough to know whether that would be better for the bill or not better for the bill, to be honest with you. There's maybe some discussion there. I mean, I'm for this bill. I mean, it takes a step toward rolling back, burdensome local government regulations. So I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that.
I'm going to ask our resident committee attorney, Senator Crago. Do you have any comments on this? On Senator Ide's comments?
Mr. Chairman, no comment on whether it makes the bill better or not. I guess the question is, do you want this particular language to override county zoning? If you do, I can give you the amendment to fix that. If you don't, then I'm not sure this still does that. I think it's a little unclear, but if you definitively want the language in this bill to override county and city zoning, then the amendment's pretty easy. I can draw the lines for you. Just let me know. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Ide.
would the bringer of the bill have any comment on that, or just leave it alone?
Come on down for your third time.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide and Senator Crago, if you had asked me a year ago, I probably would have said leave it alone. given the direction that we're headed now. And then I would be very favorable to that.
And you're favorable to deleting page 2, lines 8 and 9, and deleting on page 3, lines 21 and 22?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, that was my personal recommendation. I don't know whether or not it's the correct one. Honestly, I don't. If the good senator wanted to chime in and help the committee, if he has better advice, I'm definitely open to that as a
Thank
friendly.
you. I would ask Senator Craigo again. Since we have you on retainer, to comment if we make an amendment to delete those 2 places, what will that do to the bill?
That, Mr. Chairman, sorry, Mr. Chairman, that will essentially say the bill overrides zoning. I mean, you still then have the next provision right below that talking about public health or public safety. So, and I don't know if you run into the same issue there. But if you want to just address zoning, then I think you take out line 8 and 9 on page 2 and line 21 and 22 on page 3.
Okay, is there a motion?
But if you want it super clean, then you just take out everything from line 17 on page 3 to line 3 on page 4, and you take out lines 8 through 12. There's some conforming language there on line 5 and 6 you'd have to do as well.
Mr. Oh, yeah.
Senator McKeon.
So if I'm understanding what Senator Craigo just said, if we do that, we basically get out of the zoning business completely. Is that what that effectively would do?
Senator Craigo.
Mr. Chairman, it just says this, that no county or city could pass any zoning regulation that conflicts with this law.
Thank you.
And if one's already in place, then they'll have to adjust it. I mean, that's what that would say.
And that says that, Senator, if we take out on page 2, lines 8 and 9, page 3, 17, line 17 through on page 4, line 7, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, no, it's a little more complicated than that. So if you only want it to apply to zoning, then it would just be lines 8 and 9 on page 2 and line 21 and 22 on page 3.
Okay.
And you'd leave everything else the same,
Okay,
if you only want it to apply to zoning.
okay. I think I have it. Is there anybody want to make that amendment to delete on page 2, lines 8 and 9, page 3, delete lines 21 and 22? Senator McEwen,
I'll make that motion.
is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Ide. All those in favor of that amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed? No. That amendment passes. We're back on the bill. Is there any other amendments on the bill? Seeing that, Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we should have just kept Representative Rodriguez-Williams up here. So I'm still wondering on page 3, lines 6 through 8, was that wording added in there to say that maybe somebody couldn't have a cow in their yard or sheep in their yard or things like that? Is that why that wording was added in there? And like, I'm just really struggling with saying that animals for the use or production of food and fiber are not included in this when we have so many industries, especially in Southwest Wyoming, that do run their animals next to municipalities. And I know that there's been a lot of pushback from the community that lives out in those areas. And so I can just see what's coming. And I was just wondering why that wording was in there. Was it so that people could not keep these animals in town if it was against the city ordinance?
Representative, for your fourth time, can you address her concerns, please?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pearson, thank you for your question. No, it was not for that purpose. And again, I would repeat that in the event you wanted to amend this, I would be open to that. It'd be friendly. Your situation that you've brought up or your example hasn't come up in the past.
Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm just wondering on page 3, lines 6 through 8, or starting on 5, saying the term shall not include, I don't mind having some of those things in there, but I'm just wondering whether to delete those lines. What do you feel on that, Representative?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pearson, if you want to delete the lines or if you want to delete the species, I'd be fine with that.
Might as well stay there. Senator Pearson, are you good with leaving it alone, or are you wanting to make an amendment?
Thank you, Chairman. So I think right now we can leave it alone so that we can get through this process, and maybe we can talk about it and talk to the representative about what would be best, and our committee members, what would be best as far as addressing that language on the floor. Does that sound good?
My suggestion would be, Senator Pearson, if you would get with Representative Rodriguez in a more detailed conversation so you guys are on the same page. Are you okay with that? Okay. I believe it's time to vote. Clayton?
This is a roll call vote for House Bill 63 as amended. Senator Craigo? No. Senator Ide?
Aye.
Senator McEwen?
Aye.
Senator Pearson?
Aye.
Chairman French?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that is 4 aye and 1 no.
All right, House Bill number 63 as amended has passed the committee. Now we're on House Bill 90. Anthrax outbreak protocol. Representative Davis, take it away.
Chairman French and Senators, I present to you House Bill 90. A little background on this. This past fall, we had an outbreak of anthrax occur over there in our district, there by Elk Mountain. And the Livestock Board did a very good job of responding to that. And because of that, we've need something in some kind of a protocol developed in order to address this in the future. Last time it had occurred had been 70 years ago, and so we just need something to occur. Okay, what made this outbreak a little different than previous ones was there's human to animal contact there. There was a couple of people that contracted anthrax out of this, so that's why it's a little bit highlighted here. And with that, I can walk you through the bill.
Yeah, if you would, please.
There's been some amendments here, and I will try and read it to you with the amendments in there. Okay, as we start on the bill, on page 3, there was an amendment there to remove non-negative, which kind of referenced brucellosis, so we insert positive there. And it goes down and creates a new paragraph there in section 1 that gives it the livestock board powers in general. On page 2, we need to establish a standard of notification protocol to inform livestock producers, veterinarians, brand inspectors, and other agencies with jurisdiction or authority regarding anthrax outbreak. And there, we put period in there, and then we removed a designated surveillance area and put in there an area of observation shall be established within a county where once again, remove non-negative and insert positive anthrax tests.
Mr. Chairman, does
Senator
anybody
Cra-
else have a copy of the amendment that the good
Yeah, we
representative
should,
is?
Just hold on a second, everybody try to find your, I believe that's not it.
I don't think we have one, Mr. Chairman, so I'm just trying to follow along.
Okay, just, let's pause for a second. Clayton, do we have, that's 220, this is 224, right, that we've got?
You have you don't have the amended bill?
Oh, we have the engrossed version. Is the amendment already in the engrossed version?
The amendment should be in the engrossed version.
So it's already.
Okay, yeah, just point it out to us, if
Okay.
you would.
All right, all right. On page 5, we, after outbreaks, put a period in there. That
don't
was
have a
an
page
amendment.
5.
Is that correct? Is that what you see on your page 2?
There's only 3 pages.
Right, it's a short bill. It's only 3 pages long.
Yeah, you said page 5.
5, and that,
Page 2, line 5.
oh, all right.
My apologies.
No, you're good, go ahead. Yeah, when you've got in here, page 2, line 2. Are you on the engrossed version?
Perhaps I do not have the engrossed version. Probably I have,
Yeah, and that's what we're all looking at.
okay. All right. My fault.
But I just gotta make sure I don't have any nasty comments written down.
I'll read between the lines.
I'll share with Senator Ide here. Okay, Representative, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Once again, we can start there on page 1, and I'm a little, page 1, there was an amendment on line 3 that removed non-negative and inserted positive, because the non-negative seems to reference brucellosis, okay?
So, page 1, line 3, the non-negative has been removed and replaced with positive.
Yes,
Okay,
that was an amendment, so that's why
That's
I'm
the
getting
amendment?
confused here.
Mr. Chairman, may I chime in?
yeah, Senator Crago.
Mr. Chairman, so I'm just looking at the history of the bill here, and the good representative, the sponsor, brought a committee of the whole amendment. That committee of the whole amendment was later superseded by a second reading amendment, and so all of those amendments are not in that you're referencing, Representative, are not in the current engrossed version of the bill. So there was a different representative brought a second reading amendment and essentially deleted your committee of the whole amendment.
Thank you, Senator Crago. Representative, do you want to address that, please?
Well, I moved committee of the whole amendment number 1 to House Bill, and this is where these amendments were. So I'm confused then also. But anyway, we can talk about that as we're going here, but the basis of this bill is that we needed a protocol developed to address anthrax in the state of
And
Wyoming.
that's your, on page 2.
Well, I'll just
Go
give
ahead.
you a summary of what the bill is supposed to
Okay.
say. I'm a little confused on why we don't have an engrossed with the amendment on there. That's,
Senator Craigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the reason being is your amendment was superseded by a subsequent amendment that took your amendment off. So you did first reading amendment or committee of the whole amendment, and then there was a second reading amendment brought by Representative Williams that superseded your amendment and essentially took everything you did back out of the bill and replaced it with some other language, which is now in this version.
okay, I think I've got you. All right, so the intent of this bill is that there is not a protocol, there had not been a protocol developed for or to address anthrax, okay? On November 20th, the Livestock Board did bring rules, and they did, if you'll see in a handout, I trust you have the handout on anthrax there. The Livestock Board did come together and develop a protocol to address this. The producers in the area felt that didn't go quite deep enough, since the issue of human contact had come into play there, and they would like to have seen a little more address towards that. And then also in that, there was an area of observation or designated surveillance area to look at, which I thought was in there, but apparently it is not at this time. And they would like to see that in there. Those are the two changes that they would like the Livestock Board to go back to the table with and address those, how that protocol would address talking to the other agencies, because the Livestock Board would be the first line of defense on this, and they just need, once a positive sample would occur, then they would have to go to the additional agencies that would be authorized and need notification. With that, it's totally confusing, but it's a good bill.
That's on your referencing page 2, pretty much in its entirety. Line 2 through 5, establish a standard notification protocol to inform livestock producers, veterinarians, brand inspectors, and other agencies with jurisdiction or authority regarding anthrax outbreaks. Then you continue on. That the Livestock Board will report to the Agriculture Committee, interim committee regarding those notifications. Is that's correct?
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
I'm thoroughly confused now. Committee, any comment on this? So really the only change is on page 1, line 3, non-negative to positive, is that correct?
Well, on
Or not?
the engrossed version does not change the non-negative at all in the engrossed version.
Oh, I'm looking at the engrossed version. That has non-negative, so. Senator McEwen.
I think this question's pretty simple. Line 3, page 1. Do you want that to say non-negative, or do you want it to say positive?
Right, that's right.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, from the feedback from the Livestock Board, we'd like to remove non-negative and insert positive in there.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
So that, as I asked, that's the only change, correct?
Mr. Chairman, I believe so.
Okay. Any further questions, committee? stick around.
Once
Any,
again, I apologize for not being as prepared as I thought I was.
Well, you might as well just stay up here, because I'm sure that when we're, any further, I'll open it up to public comment.
Mr. Chairman, good morning. Steve True, the Director at the Livestock Board. I think Dr. Hazel is online if you need some scientific answers. I would only submit a couple things here. First off, I appreciate the non-negative to positive. That's the change it needs to make. Non-negative is only a brucellosis test. Positive anthrax is either positive or negative. So that's a change that would be made. But I would point to the fact sheet that you have and the page about where it says a positive anthrax diagnosis. And in the protocol, the board and the state veterinarian have developed, if you look at number 2, at everybody that's notified there, we've covered and met the standards of section 1, page 2, the new language about establishing a standard protocol. So I would submit that this isn't necessary. The board's already accomplished this task. However, if the committee wishes to go forward with this bill, I would appreciate that change on page 1 that you've just discussed. And with that, I would take any questions, or if you have any questions about anthrax in general, if Dr. Hazel's online, she will take those.
Any questions? Senator Ide.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. How does this change anything the way the Livestock Board operates right now?
It doesn't.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just note, please, Mr. Chairman, if you look at the good bringer of the bill, and I want to commend him with working with his constituents. This was a surprise to all of us. Did a great job of helping us put some meetings together. But if you look at H under section 2, under that positive anthrax diagnosis, that's public health, that's game and fish. That's the other agencies that are involved. Those are the folks that were our first contacts and in the first calls with the affected parties.
Senator Ide.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I probably didn't explain myself well enough. How does this entire bill change the way the Livestock Board operates right now?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, it does not.
Okay.
We'll follow this protocol that the board has adopted in November.
Any questions, further questions? Okay, thank you. Any other public comment in the room here? And anybody else in the room that would like to speak, if you'd work your way towards the front, so we have time for the third bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim McGagnon with the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association. We certainly don't disagree with any of the language in this bill, particularly with the minor change was promoted. But as had been pointed out, the Livestock Board has already done this. And as I think about this piece of legislation, I think back to a comment I've heard from several members of the legislature this session on other bills. Why are we putting words in statute that are not necessary? And we've had debates over even 3 or 4 words in some cases. Here we're putting a whole section into statute that our position would be, it's not necessary. It's confirming what the Livestock Board has already done. They reached out and worked with affected interests when they developed that. If the rules that they put into place need to be tweaked in any way, we found that the board is open to considering those changes should they become necessary. But at this point, while a year ago, this bill would have been sorely needed had we all had the foresight to recognize that anthrax was going to be an outbreak again. Today, we feel it's not necessary and that we should rely on the good work that the Livestock Board has done. For that reason, we urge you not to move the bill forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any questions for Mr. McGagnon? Seeing none, thank you. Next, for public comment, please come forward.
Good morning, Chairman French, members of the committee, Era Arano, Rocky Mountain Farmers Union. Support or agree with the comments of the previous speaker and are happy if the bill moves forward in its current form. Also happy to support the board with the current regulations. I think either way, the current regulations work. I do want to point out, however, in that change for non-negative, there are 2 other instances that are on page 2, not just the one on page 1. So if page
Which line?
page 2, line 6, non-negative to positive, and page 2, line 10, also non-negative to positive. No?
Isn't it?
Okay, just highlighting where it is on the,
I don't have a.
uh,
Are you on
Mr.
the-
Chairman?
sorry, I
yeah,
must
we're-
have the same version.
Yeah, you need
as
to
the
be
other
on
one.
the engrossed.
I'll try and do a better search. My apologies. Thank you for your time. I'll stand for any questions.
So let's back up a bit. Are you for the bill or not?
We are neutral on this bill. We think
Okay.
we think that it adds to the green books. We think that what the livestock board has done is sufficient, but we also understand that if it makes folks feel more comfortable to have it in statute that the livestock board needs to maintain these regulations and update them, that's fine as well.
So is there, I guess my question is on page 2, lines 2 through 5, the underline, is there any harm in that?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think there's any harm in that. We support what's written in, now that I have with my,
Support what's written, but yet neutral. Okay, all right. Thank you. Any questions? Next up is Mr. Moline with Farm Bureau.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Mullane, Wyoming Farm Bureau. To show ag unity, we'd like to see this bill go forward. I think it has been done, but it's not going to hurt a thing, so I'd ask this bill to go forward.
Give him heck, Senator Craigo.
I'm just gonna comment on unity,
Okay.
because you said move forward.
That was-
The one right before you said neutral, and the one before that said please don't pass. So I don't know. That's the legislature's definition of unity right there.
So we have don't pass, neutral, pass. So, okay, continue on, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Craigo, that was meant firmly tongue in cheek. I perhaps didn't come across that way.
As I think Senator Craigo was trying to say, we try to achieve unity. Okay, go ahead. Just in
done.
support. Okay.
DUN, done.
Any questions of Mr. Marlene? Seeing none? Okay, you guys can be done. I would have the bringer of the bill stick around. Next, Mr. Kennedy.
Keith Kennedy for Wyoming Wool Growers. We do support this, and we certainly understand that the Livestock Board has already acted on this, but I guess the only thing that I would add is, given the scarcity of these outbreaks, it might not hurt to have it in the Green Book for reference 70 years from now when the next outbreak happens, hopefully. So with that, welcome questions. Happy to.
Any questions of Mr. Kennedy? No longer a tie. Okay, thank you, Mr. Any other public comment in the room? Any elected official in the room want to comment? Okay, we'll go. We have a couple people online. If you'd bring the first, Dr. Hazel. Okay, great.
Good morning, Chairman French. This is Dr. Hazel on committee. Can you hear me okay this morning? We're in the field.
I can hear you, but all we see is my ugly mug. So
We're in the field this morning, and I hesitate to do any further than that. I don't want to reveal any premises we might be on this morning.
you're good. Go ahead.
So I just want to add a couple of things. Number one, to keep in mind that we do not deal with the human side of disease. We deal with zoonotic diseases and inform the public. And the Department of Public Health will come in thereafter, which is why we have them as another state agency as appropriate on number 2. So we don't deal with human health. That goes over to public health. We only notify them and make them aware that a zoonotic disease is present and any precautions to take when a zoonotic disease might occur. Also, I think there's been a little bit of concern about people not reporting possible anthrax. I want to make note, as Director True can mention as well, that our statutes take care of anybody that isn't reporting a disease. Our statute already addresses that concern. I think the area of observation might have come in one respect that the recommendation for an anthrax situation is that people vaccinate in a 6-mile radius. It is not a requirement. It is a universal recommendation that they vaccinate in a 6-mile radius. What we typically do is observe wherever there might be a case reported. And then that area may be quarantined on that specific premise and not beyond that, and that is per statute. As you can see, the protocol is written. I have discussed this protocol with our other state agencies, particularly Game and Fish and Public Health. They do not see any issues. That is all I wanted to bring to your attention. And thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Hazel. Any questions of Dr. Hazel? Seeing none, thank you, Doctor. Next up is Donald O'Toole. Is that right? Okay, if you'd bring him in. Thank you, sir. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, yep, go ahead.
Okay, Chairman French, members of the committee, my name is Donald O'Toole. I worked as a diagnostic veterinarian for more than 40 years, most of it at the Wyoming State Vet Lab. I confess my heart sank when I read that Representative Davis had put down a bill on anthrax after the Elk Mountain episode, and then I was very pleasantly surprised when I I read House Bill 90. It makes sense, and I support its intent, although I agree it may now be redundant since the Livestock Board has put in place a protocol. And it is good to have a standard protocol for anthrax to inform producers and the general public when there's a confirmed outbreak. So I hope you will bear with me with the following comments, which are slightly tangential to the bill. I was not privy to what happened during the Elk Mountain outbreak. Clearly, a few things went wrong. It doesn't take 2 months to establish a laboratory diagnosis of anthrax. It's also drilled into veterinarians that when they see a sudden die-off of range cattle, anthrax should be top of mind, and not ruling it out has consequences short-term for the producer and long-term, decades or possibly a century later, for the property itself. When there is a suspicion of anthrax, a PCR test can rule it out in less than a day, usually in a morning or an afternoon. I hazard a guess that we've had other undiagnosed episodes of anthrax in Wyoming since the big Sublette County outbreak in the 1950s. The late Dr. Jim Summers in Sundance and Lander knew of one in his area. This is less than 10 years ago. And he prevented a company from digging up soil in a historical anthrax burial site. And in September, there was some public backslapping about diagnosing anthrax. Some of this was before your committee. It is not obvious to me that all 50 to possibly 100 carcasses were incinerated, or that GPS coordinates for necropsy sites, dead piles, and burial locations were recorded. Maybe they have been. I understand that multiple carcasses were opened and examined by producers, clinical veterinarians, and diagnostic personnel. For the record, that should never happen when anthrax is a possibility. So as Richard Nixon might say, mistakes were made, and they don't need to be ventilated here. But I encourage the committee to broach with the Livestock Board the topic of undertaking an honest review of what happened last summer and what might be done better next time around. And maybe that's already in train. When Dr. Jim Logan was state veterinarian, the board had access to a curtain incinerator to burn large animal carcasses from mass casualty events. It doesn't sound to me as though one was available, or if it was, whether it was used. If the board no longer has one, it might be a good time to get one, or at least get some practice in in-place incineration of carcasses. I think we were very lucky last year. Nobody died. I certainly hope nobody went out of business. But I assure you, having gone through the early days of BSE in England in the 1980s, the unexpected happens. And to coin a phrase, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. We're going to see anthrax again, and there will be a next time. So it's good to have a protocol. Stand for any questions. Thank you for your patience.
Sir, any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony. All right, that's all that's online, correct? Any one last chance for those in the audience for public comment? All right, public comment is closed. Committee? Committee, what's your thoughts on House Bill 90? It has been moved by Senator Craigo, seconded by Senator Pearson. All right. Looking at the bill, are there any amendments to it? Senator Craigo.
Mr. Chairman, line 3, page 1, strike non-negative and insert positive.
Okay, is there a second to that? Second by Senator Pearson. All those in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that amendment has passed. Are there any other amendments? Anything else on page 1? Page 2, if I can get there. Page 2 or page 3? Okay, seeing none, looks like it's time to call for the vote. Clayton?
This is a roll call vote for House Bill 90 as amended. Representative Craigo.
Aye.
Representative Ide.
No.
Representative McEwen.
Aye.
Representative Pearson.
Aye.
Chairman French.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that is 4 aye and 1 no.
Do those votes count even though we're not representatives?
Okay, moving on. Thank you, Representative. Next up is House Bill 224, prohibiting foreign adversary property ownership. Representative Banks, if you would walk us through the green one, please.
Engrossed, got it. Mr.
Engrossed
Chairman.
copy, if you would.
Yep. Okay, so little history here, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman, committee.
committee's
So this,
getting ready to talk to us. Go ahead.
yes, this is a issue that's been worked on for at least 2 years. We ran into hearing some issues. Well, does the Constitution prohibit us from enacting bills like this? We heard that a little bit. So in response, some of you will recall the Joint Ag Committee came up with House Joint Resolution 2, which would clarify and put on the ballot for the voters to decide these distinctions. So there would never be a question again, well, is it constitutional, is it not? We'll put it on the ballot so we have that certainty moving forward. Then that brings us to this bill, House Bill 224, which will be the rules that fall into place upon passage of that amendment, if it so does. So what this bill does is it represents a collaborated effort from members of the Ag Committee, some of you, landowners, industry, a real great collaborated effort on what we can do to come up with a viable solution that satisfies the concerns shared broadly amongst these different stakeholders. This bill addresses primarily national security concerns that's evident around many states, especially here in Wyoming. And so what this bill does is it limits foreign adversaries from owning property in the state of Wyoming. This bill lines out what those foreign adversaries are. They're defined under 15 CFR 791.4, and that lists those adversaries as China, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Russia, and Venezuela. That's the definition that was agreed upon with all these stakeholders to ensure we have a tight definition of what that is. Also included is countries designated as state sponsors of terrorism. Again, language that was agreed upon to keep this bill tight. This language satisfies what we want to accomplish, which is restricting enemies of the United States from being able to own our property, but it is also favorable to industry as to not place burdens or restrictions on them and their contributions to the state and our economy, which I'm sure you'll hear from them later on. It is in the best interest of our national security that these nations not be allowed to own land, especially adjacent to military bases, big tracts of agricultural land, and other areas of concern in the state of Wyoming. It also has some economic sovereignty impacts. As land, especially agricultural land, that ends up in foreign adversarial lands, is land that's taken from friendly production. In the news and in the studies, you can see that a large percentage of the alfalfa crop in the southern production region of the United States is currently being exported to China. And that should be concerning, that crop is going to enemies of the United States.
And if you're going through, if you make sure you reference a page in the line if you're going through it, or if you're just general comments.
Oh, yeah, I'm just kind of giving you a summary
Okay.
for
All right.
time here, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So this bill attempts both national security impact as well as the economic sovereignty impact. You'll see registration is required per subsection B of this, which I'll refer to you is on page 3, subsection B there. Registration is required with the Office of Homeland Security. This requirement of registration, as well as the prohibition of foreign adversarial ownership, will be included in assessment notices. This bill allows the Office of Homeland Security to promulgate rules and gives the Attorney General the authority to enforce these provisions. The final thing is, Mr. Chairman, is this act is a trigger bill, which would be contingent upon passage of that Constitution Amendment, which was passed by the other body, passed by this committee, which would put on the ballot again. The voters decide if we want these distinctions, and then this bill would go into place upon passage of that.
So if we, thank you, sir. If we pass this, it only applies if, as a trigger bill, if Joint Resolution 2 would pass. What it is, so if 2 fails or doesn't come out of the Senate, because I think I've seen it somewhere on the Committee of the Whole. We haven't got to it yet. So it all depends on whether this bill, whether that passes or fails, correct?
Yes and no, Mr. Chairman. On page 9, you'll see language there on section 5. This act is effective on line 14 there at the bottom. This act is effective upon passage of an amendment to Article 1, Section 29 of the Wyoming Constitution as proposed by the 2025 House Joint Resolution 2 or similar future resolution.
Correct, that's kind of what I
So we
said,
can,
yeah.
if this one fails, we can try and do it again, or there's opportunities to amend this to
Or if
another
this-
route upon
If
preference of the.
it passes, it's still dependent on what 2 does.
Correct.
Correct, okay. Senator Craigo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a question for the good sponsor. How exactly does that work? Does it go in the green book with a big note on it that says not effective? You following me? Because if it's gonna go in the green books, people will read that. They may not get down to this is only effective if. So how exactly do we deal with that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I think it would be similar to other bills we passed that are based upon that. There was some bills passed last year dealing with the tax things. I'm assuming that they do go in there with the provision that this is based upon passage of that, would be my understanding. If staff maybe has an idea of how that works, but that's my understanding of it.
Any follow-up or any other questions? Hang around. Are you done?
Yep.
Hang around.
Won't go anywhere.
All right, stay here. Public, I'll open it up for public comment. So where we're beginning to get tight on time, if those that want to comment, would come up to the first row or up here if there's room, I'd appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County, spent 30 years in the nuclear submarine force. This bill is important more than many people perceive, because if you look at our nuclear submarines, they're one of our premier intelligence collectors. What do they need to be one? They need a couple square feet to stick something up into the air. Otherwise, nobody knows you're there. A foreign adversary could do the same thing with a piece of property within the state, say over near F.E. Warren or out near one of their missile fields, to just sit there and collect information. And they then send it home, satellite link, internet link, take your pick, and they sit there and try and make sense out of it. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But the point is, we don't want to give them the footprint to put that piece of intelligence collection gear. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you much for your service and your comments. Next.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Lynn Budd. I'm the Director of the Wyoming Office of Homeland Security. I would like to just give you a little bit of background of current statute and current legislation that's moving through the legislature that might have an effect on this particular bill. We currently have statute that directs us to develop critical infrastructure zones, so parcels of land that are identified around critical infrastructure that we will look at conveyances performed at the county level and compare those with those critical infrastructure zones to look at that overlap, if you will, in looking for foreign investment. We currently, there's a bill that has passed both houses, but will be in, need to have concurrence due to amendments put on in the Senate, which we do support the bill, and we support the amendments, House Bill 97, which allows for the change of data flow from current statute. Currently, we are directed to develop those critical infrastructure zones and send them to the counties. As you can imagine, that's very sensitive information. That's not something that we choose to share out widely. In addition, in conversation with the County Commissioners, County Clerks Association, after the bill was passed last year, they would also not like to be the ones deciding which parcels of land should be investigated. It's much easier for them to send us all of the conveyances that they have, and then we compare those with our critical infrastructure zones. So it reduces the burden on the local jurisdictions as well as keeps the critical infrastructure information more secure. So within this bill, and that's it, House Bill 97 does that. It changes that direction of information flow. On page 5, lines 4 through 10, there is a reference to the clerks reporting purchases of interest to the Office of Homeland Security. That may not be appropriate language, given if we may be reversing the direction of flow of information, as they wouldn't have information on whether or not it was purchased by a foreign adversary or not. Again, we would be receiving, according to this bill, we would be the registrant for those foreign investors or those companies that are owned by foreign adversaries. So I think that paragraph would have to be reviewed should House Bill 97 make it through today.
So currently, do you feel on page 5, lines 4 through 10 that you just mentioned, does that paragraph need to be deleted?
Mr. Chairman, I think that would solve the issue, yes.
All right. Thank you. Further comment? We're tight on time. Further comment? Any questions? Senator Craigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So along those lines, I mean, the provisions below that F and G, I mean, I think we'd have the same issue with those because those are also covered in the previous legislation. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Craigo, I think you are correct.
Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Lynn. So who's going, I guess I'm just confused. If these lines are not in there, then who's gonna be looking into these properties? Who's gonna be doing that? So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pearson, one suggestion might be that this current bill amends a different statute that is not ours. Our statute is 1913, in the area pertaining to critical infrastructure is 1913-501. It might be good to take a look at that particular area versus adding the enforcement of this in a different statute so that we don't have that conflict. Our statute currently gives us the ability to investigate all conveyances near critical infrastructure. So if you wanted to investigate all conveyances, conveyances that are in conjunction with the critical infrastructure zones. So this could be added with regard to development of a registry that is defined at the beginning of this bill, and adding the penalty to our statute as well. So that the enforcement of the reporting can be added into our statute.
Okay, any further questions of Lynn? Seeing none, stick around. We may have further questions for you. Please come up, as we're getting to that point of getting tight on time to finish this up. So go ahead. Who's first?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name's Jody Levin. I'm here on behalf of the Trona Industry and the Mining Association. So we had actually asked for this issue as an interim topic because of the bills we've seen the last couple of years. The overriding concern just being broad definitions that were inadvertently capturing some entities in our extractive sector. So just some appreciation to, sincere appreciation, I should say, to the bill sponsor for working with us over the interim and then during session to, one, narrow those definitions down so that we're truly capturing foreign adversaries, and then aligning all the definitions in the various bills throughout session so that no matter the circumstance, we know exactly who is being defined as a foreign adversary. So we no longer run the risk of some of our extractive entities being determined to be an adversary just because the definition was too broad. So we thank this committee, the other committees, and certainly the bill sponsor for that work.
So you feel you don't support this bill? You feel it should be an interim topic, or do you support the bill?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I confused the committee. We were concerned about previous legislation. We're comfortable with this one.
Okay, you're good. Any questions? Seeing none, next, Mr. Kennedy.
Mr. Chairman, Keith Kennedy on behalf of the Wyoming Ag Business Association. I would pose a couple of questions, and one is on Romanet C on the bottom of page 3. And it would appear from that reading that ownership that is current at this time is not prohibited. I would suggest that there might be reporting. The other issue that I would bring up to the committee is what happens with corporate ownership that is a foreign adversary and then goes to a public offering and goes to public ownership rather than a foreign entity. And I could call your specific attention to that case in eastern Laramie County with a large animal production facility. And so that's another question that I would have. My ag business members have a variety of opinions on this, is the way I would put it. Those ranging from large companies that are based in a friendly country that's not named here, and one that's solely owned by a Chinese company as well. And with that, I don't know whether I can answer any questions or not.
Well, thanks for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none? You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ryan McConaughey with the Petroleum Association of Wyoming. I just wanted to echo Ms. Levin's comments that based on previous bills in previous sessions, we had concerns, and all of those concerns have been addressed by the bringer of the bill, and happy to support this bill.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, thanks for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak? Any elected official want to speak? All right, I believe Clayton, I believe we have one online, is that correct? Stephen Malia? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. I would just ask that you make your comment succinct.
Yes. Okay. I was in the Navy myself for 31 years, and I agree with Captain Winnie, everything that he had said. I testified on this bill last year and with the Appropriations Committee, and they would not even vote on it. There were several people that said we need to get China out of here. And in addition, that we needed to make sure that adversarial countries, nations, did not have any access to our country. If you remember back in 1979, the Shah of Iran was overthrown. Iran was an ally, and then overnight they became an adversary. So we need to protect our land from all foreign countries in that they could change political ideologies overnight. So we need to be able to protect our land. The land belongs to us, Americans, and as far as having a foreign country, even if they are an ally, we need to make sure that we have protection so that in case they change, we can get rid of them and protect ourselves. I know that there was a guy from the Air Force that said they were changing out weapon systems last year, and the Chinese were over there observing everything that they did. And the Chamber of Commerce said, hey, the Chinese are really pushing hard to get land owned and leased by F.E. Warren Air Force Base and over by the Nebraska, Wyoming border where they had nuclear missiles. And so that we've got to protect ourselves, and I stand fully in support of this bill. And again, I agree with Captain Winnie, and I appreciate your opportunity to comment.
Thank you, sir. And first off, thanks for your service to the country. It's much appreciated.
Yes, sir.
Any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you, sir. All right, that was the only one online, correct? One last chance for anybody in the audience to speak. All right, public comment is now closed. I'd ask the bringer of the bill to come back up. I believe we are gonna have some questions. I'll start off maybe. Page 5. There was a comment by Mrs. Budd, or what, I believe the name, to delete lines 4 through 10 and possibly F and G from a comment from our senator. Do you want to comment on that, sir?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm actually, I guess I'm confused on here because when we heard that testimony in the House Ag Committee, an amendment was brought, which we adopted, which I was under the impression satisfied the concerns. And so from what I just heard, I guess we didn't clear up everything. And I'm willing to work with the good director to try and, I guess, go further into that if we need to.
Let's try to clarify. Right now, I've asked her to come up and let's try to clarify it here at the table. Go ahead, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to make sure that we are not writing legislation that is conflicting with current legislation. And again, 4 through 10 likely will be incorrect, as the county clerks will just be sharing all of their conveyances with us. So that will already be happening. It doesn't need to be said again. And then F and G, we have the ability to investigate conveyances at this point in time in current statute. And so F for sure, we already have that ability. G, communicating that with the Division of Criminal Investigation, which is a division of the Attorney General's office. I think part of that could also be amended.
Okay, bringer of the bill, having heard that, what's your thoughts or comments since it's your bill?
No, thank you. I appreciate that clarifying that they already have the ability to do that. The one question I have there is on G, that's kind of the penalty provisions here. And so if we take that out, I'm not sure if we'll have a penalty or if the office is already allowed to administer a penalty. That would just be my question.
If you have an
Mr.
answer for
Chairman,
that
no,
one?
we do not have the ability to assess a penalty at this point in time. So.
You do not?
We do not.
Okay.
We do not. So that may be, again, my suggestion would also be to add the language with regard to the registry to our statute versus this statute, because then it would all be together with regard to foreign investment. But that's just a thought.
So as we look at this, is the bringer of the bill satisfied that on page 5E, lines 4 through 10 can be deleted?
Correct. Yes.
Is the bringer of the bill satisfied that on page 5F, which is lines 12 through 20, can be deleted?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all right, we'll all agree on that. I think the sticking point may be G, the penalty. Lynn, Bud, are you okay if that's left in there?
Mr. Chairman.
So there's a little bite to, I think you understand where I'm coming from.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do think that there should be a penalty, yes.
So are you good with
Yes.
G staying?
Yes. Yes, sir.
So, kumbaya. So, all right, it sounds like we're good if page 5, lines 4 through 10 and 12 through 21 are deleted, and that on 5G stays. Director, are you okay with that?
Mr. Chairman, yes, sir.
Okay. Bringer of the bill, are you good?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any further comments on the bill? And once again, it all depends if the joint resolution or whatever the public passes that, correct? Then it reverts to this. This becomes effective.
That's
Okay,
correct, Mr.
all right. Everybody good? All right, thank you. You two for working that out. Appreciate it. Okay. Committee, what's your thoughts? Anybody want to move the bill?
I'll move the bill.
Bill's been moved by Senator Pearson. Is there a second? Second by Senator McEwen. Sounds like we have, does anybody want to make an amendment to delete, on page 5, delete E, which is lines 4 through 10, and delete F, which is lines 12 through 20?
I will make that amendment.
Okay, is there a second to that? That amendment's been moved by Senator McEwen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Ide. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that amendment has passed. Are there any other amendments to House Bill 224? Anything on page 1, page 2? Okay, well, yeah, there is a.
Tim, you don't mind?
Okay. This amendment is page 9, lines 14 through 17, if everybody gets over there. And I believe the bringer of the bill had mentioned this, but the amendment lines, page 9, lines 14 through 17, delete entirely and insert Section 5, this act shall be effective only upon certification by the Secretary of State that the electors have adopted the amendment to the Constitution at the 2026 general election as provided in 2025 House Joint Resolution 2. Bringer of the bill, you good with that? I mean, that's from our staff attorneys, correct?
Yeah, thank you.
We'll take a moment for you to look at it.
Oh, this is from the attorneys?
I believe so.
Okay, just fixing that.
Yeah,
I think I'm good with that, or if we want to add on to that, the same or a similar future resolution, just so we can work on it in the,
well,
if we need, or whatever the committee's pleasure there.
I think if you're good with this amendment, this kind of takes care of everything. If there's something in the future, we'll address it then. Anybody want to make, introduce this amendment? Moved by Senator Ide. Is there a second? I will second it.
Oh, sorry, I'll second it. I was looking at another thing.
I'll take that back, and Senator Pearson has seconded it. Any comments on it? Seeing none. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay, that amendment has passed. Okay. Is,
Just ask one more question. I know it's not a garbage break. Can I, Mr.
yeah, go ahead, Senator Pearson. We've got 9 minutes to wrap this up.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Banks, so I also was looking at page 3, line C, and why it doesn't apply to land that possibly has been purchased prior to July 1st, 2025. Just, can you explain that?
Sure, yeah, that came up in the discussions, and that goes into a whole different part of takings in the Constitution. And what we determined was, now what we're gonna do is go with all the land that's going forward, and in the meantime, see how we can address current land. So this is the first step, one bite of the apple, and we'll continue to work on how we can address current holdings further on into the future.
Address your concern? Okay. Any other concerns, or as we go through, is there any other amendments to House Bill 224? Question being called. Clayton, if you call the roll, please.
This is a roll call vote for House Bill 224 as amended. Senator Craigo. Senator Ide.
Aye.
Senator McEwen.
Aye.
Senator Pearson.
Aye.
Chairman French.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that is 5 aye.
Okay, House Bill number 224 as amended has passed. Anything else, committee? What's that?
Did we pass this?
Yes, yep. Any other things? The Ag Committee is adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Trouble.